Yo, what is up, Raidernation? It shows this Samoan Raider back at it again with another video, and the 53-man roster has finally been revealed. I mean, the Raiders dropped it yesterday, but I'm finally making a video today. But you know what? That's besides the point. But before I go over all the players that were cut from the team and all the players that actually make the final 53, I want to give you guys some quick nation news that you can use. First up, it looks like Darren Waller has finally found his new agency that he's going to be repping. According to Adam Schefter, he tweeted out earlier today that the Raiders tight end Darren Waller, who has been seeking a contract extension throughout the offseason, signed this morning with agents Drew Rosenhaus and Robert Bailey. The hope, Rosenhaus said, is getting a deal done as soon as possible. And you know what? That's great news to hear, because we could possibly be seeing a new contract extension getting done before next week's game against the LA Chargers. So hopefully we can lock in Darren Waller for the future, because he is a pivotal part of this offense. So locking him in right now for the future is going to be a great move by this Raiders team. We also got news that today Darren Waller returned to practice. I do find it kind of ironic that Darren Waller throughout the whole offseason has missed a couple of practices, well, majority of the practices due to an injury. But the moment my boy leaves Clutch Sports and signs with a new agent and Drew Rosenhaus, he seems good to go.
Darren's good. Darren's good to go.
Okay. Now, speaking of players returning to practice today, according to my guy Levi Edwards, aka Khalil Mack Jr., he tweeted out today that rookie Darren Mumford Jr. returns to practice today, and he's currently competing for the Raiders' starting right tackle gig. Now, you know, with Leatherwood now gone from this team and released from this team, it's going to be a really interesting battle to see who's going to take over that right tackle position going into week 1 between Darren Mumford Jr. and Jermaine Illuminor. And if I had to guess who would be starting at that right tackle position, I would kind of lean towards Darren Mumford Jr. But do you guys agree with me, Raider Nation? Who do you feel like will start at right tackle starting next week? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And last but not least, let's talk about the guy that used to play at that right tackle position, Alex Leatherwood. As you guys already know, we released Alex Leatherwood yesterday. Kind of a surprising move to a lot of people. Not really surprising to me and other Raider fans that have a little bit of common sense, but it looks like the Chicago Bears have claimed Alex Leatherwood off of waivers, saving the Raiders a total of $5.9 million in dead cap. So again, shout out to the Chicago Bears for being dumb enough to signing our former first-round pick in Alex Leatherwood. Now, the time has come where the Raiders finally have their official roster, or their initial roster, going into week 1 against the LA Chargers, and the Raiders released a lot of players, some players that, you know, kind of surprised us, and some players that we already knew that wasn't going to make the roster anyways. But let's talk about those players right now. For the players that were waived from the team, those players are Alex Bars, Curtis Bolton, Ike Brown, Bryce Cosby, Quentin Tarantino, Cole. I don't know if that's how you really say his name, but that's how I'm going to say his name. We had Cole Fotheringham, Chase Garbers, Alex Leatherwood, of course, Jordan Meredith, Bamadele Olasini, Bamadili Omasili, Amadillo, Bamadil. You guys know what I mean. We also have Dylan Stoner, Myron Tungavailoa Amosa, Zach Van Valkenburg, Austin Walter, and Isaiah Zuber. Now, the players that were released by the team, surprisingly, wide receiver Keelan Cole, Horonis Grasu, Matthias Farley, Darius Phillip, and the Big O's Kyle Pecco. And the player that was placed on the IR, or the reserve/injured list, was tight end Jacob Hollister. Now, let's be honest, Raider Nation, most of these guys on this list right here, we already knew weren't really going to make the roster. Only 2 names kind of stood out to me the most that I felt like could have possibly made the roster. Other than Alex Leatherwood, I do feel like that was a bit surprising to some people. But one is wide receiver Keelan Cole. He's another veteran wide receiver that we brought in during the offseason, but we released right before the start of the season. I mean, we released a veteran wide receiver in DeMarcus Robinson not too long ago from this roster, but it just goes to show you how deep this wide receiver room is right now. And it also shows you how these young players are really developing. You look at guys like DJ Turner and also another young wide receiver in Tyron Johnson. These two really stood out in preseason and must have really caught the eye of Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler to make the final 53. And then you got to look at my guy, defensive tackle Kyle Pecco, the Big Oos. You know, I really wanted him to be on the team at least as a depth chart piece, but you know, I feel like the Raiders probably already have those guys on the roster right now. So a quick update, Raider Nation. According to my guy Raider Scout, the Raiders have signed 14 players to the practice squad right now, meaning there's only 2 more slots available. Those players being quarterback Chase Garbers, running back Austin Walter, wide receiver Isaiah Isaiah Zuber, wide receiver Dylan Stoner, tight end Cole Fotheringham, tackle Bam Olaseni, guard Jordan Meredith, center Horones Grasu, defensive end Myron Tagovailoa Amosa, defensive end Zach Van Valkenburg, linebacker Curtis Bolton, cornerback Ike Brown, cornerback Bryce Cosby, and safety Matthias Farley. Now, it is great to see that my guy Myron Tagovailoa Amosa is on the practice squad, because at least we got some oos out there, you know what I mean? But another name that I'm really happy to see is running back Austin Walters. He's a guy that I felt like really shined in the preseason, and even though we have a lot of great running backs on the roster right now, he's a great guy to keep on the practice squad just in case, you know, knock on wood, something does happen. At least we got some kind of security in that position. Now, for the moment you guys all been waiting for, let's talk about this final 53-man roster. Shout out to my guy Raiders Avenue on Instagram for this graphic. I really like this, so I thought I'd use it on this video. So if you guys are not following my guy on Instagram, go and follow my guy. Now let's break down this whole 53-man roster, starting with the offense, and we got to start off with those signal callers. We have two quarterbacks on this roster right now. Obviously we have Derek Carr starting, and then Jarrett Stidham. Now moving on to the running back room, we have 5 running backs on the roster. 5 running backs. That's a lot of running backs on the roster, and I know a lot of people are like, damn, 5 running backs? But the guys that did make the roster start off with, you know, Josh Jacobs, Zamir White, Brandon Bolden, Britton Brown, and Amir Abdullah. Those last 2 names, man, shout out to those guys because they really stood out in preseason. These are 2 guys that really had a lot of burn in the preseason and really showed out. That just proves to you guys that hard work really does pay off, and it's good to see a guy like Britton Brown actually make the final 53. Amir Abdullah is another guy that really earned his spot on this team, not only as a running back, but as a pass catcher out of the backfield and as a special teamer. Now moving on to our wide receiver room, it's another deep position group. We have our star wide receiver Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow, Matt Collins, Tyron Johnson, and DJ Turner. Another 2 wide receivers that really stood out and that really took over, you know, those veteran wide receiver spots. Like I said before, Demarcus Robinson, Keelan Cole, those are 2 veteran wide receivers that we thought could have possibly made the team, but these 2 really stood out in the preseason games, you know, DJ Turner and Tyron Johnson. So shout out to those 2. Now moving on to the tight end room, we have Darren Waller, obviously. We have Foster Moreau, Jacob Hollister, who's on the IR right now, and Jesper Horsted. Now looking at the offensive line, at the tackle position, we got Colton Miller, Jackson Barton, Thayer Mumford Jr., Brandon Parker. The offensive guards that we have on the roster right now is Lester Cotton Jr., John Simpson, Dylan Parham, Jermaine Illuminar, and at center we have the Big O's Andre James. Now moving on to the nitty gritty on the defensive side of the ball, at defensive end we have Max Crosby, Chandler Jones, Cleveland Farrell, Tashawn Bauer, and Malcolm Kuntz. Man, shout out to Tashawn Bauer. That's a name that really stood out to me, and he's a guy that really stood out in the Dolphins game. I did not know too much about him going into that game, but seeing what he provided on the defensive line in that game and also in the last game of the preseason against the Patriots, he was a force to be reckoned with and is definitely a great depth piece on this roster. I love to see a lot of these young guys just make a name for themselves in the preseason and earn their spot on the final 53. So shout out to Tashawn Bauer, and also shout out to Malcolm Kuntz. He's another go-getter out there, another young star that's definitely on his way up. Now moving on to the defensive tackle room, we have Bilal Nichols, Andrew Billings, Tyler Lancaster, who's on the IR. We have Kendall Vickers, Matthew Butler, Jonathan Hankins, and Neil Farrell Jr. At the linebacker position, we have Pro Bowler Denzel Perriman, Devon Diablo, Jayon Brown, Darian Butler, and Luke Masterson. Another 2 players that stood out in preseason, man. I really looked at this new regime, really don't care about where you were drafted, where you're coming from, how big of a name you are, because these 2 guys were guys that I felt like possibly couldn't have made the roster, but seeing what they contributed in preseason and also just seeing some of these other linebackers that were injured, these other veteran linebackers that we signed in the offseason, these guys really took advantage of their opportunity out there, and it's great that they made the final 53 as well. Now, in the cornerback room, in the secondary, we have Nate Hobbs, Rock Ya-Sin, Anthony Averett, Amik Robertson, and Sam Webb. Not only did Webb steal Trayvon Mullen's job, he also stole his number, switching his number from 48 to 27. Tell me you a savage without telling me you a savage. And at the safety position, man, we have Trayvon Merritt, Jonathan Abram, Deron Harmon, Roderick Teamer, and the Big Oos Isaiah Pola-Mao. Now I know there was a lot of people out there surprised that my guy Isaiah Pola-Mao made the roster, and some of you guys are saying that by next week he's probably not even going to be on the roster. He's probably going to be cut or on the practice squad. You know what? Shut that noise right now. Put some respect on my cousin's name. Shout out to my guy Isaiah for making the final 53, whether he's going to be getting any kind of PT or even just being a special teams player. I don't care. It's great to see that he's out there on the final 53, and I hope going into the season he could possibly change his number from 40 to 43. If you know, you know. And our special teams, it comes as no surprise, we have our Pro Bowl punter and AJ Cole, our should have been Pro Bowl kicker and Daniel Carlson, and long snapper Trent Sieg. That completes our final 53. Overall, I'm really happy about this roster because I do believe and I do trust in Dave Zig and also Josh McDaniels that they kept the right 53 to go into the season. So if you guys have any other players that you felt should have made the final 53, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. All right, Raider Nation, that is all I have for you guys today. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button. Also, if this is the very first time you're coming across my channel and you love the Las Vegas Raiders, then hit that subscribe button, hit that notification icon button just to notify you guys when I upload more videos just like this. Until the next video, this your boy Small Raider and your boys. Yeah.
Started off in Oakland, now we here. Thought that we was done, we just hit another gear. Look, started off in Oakland, now we here. Hey, pull up with the nation in the silver black gear. Look, 4 games straight, we in the playoff. Shout out to the Chargers fans, y'all enjoy the layoff.